Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm from Gina K Designs. My YouTube channel contains content that is intended to share paper crafting, tutorials, and inspiration with all of you. I hope that you enjoy. In today's video, we're going to be using the Gina K Designs A Big Hello card kit. I'm using the stamps, dies, cardstock, and stencil from this kit, and a few supplies from my stash as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you get some inspiration for your Big Hello card kit. Let's get into today's video. For project number 1, we're going to be using the A Big Hello stamp set, and we'll use the large floral stamp in this set. And I've got a piece of the cardstock that came in the kit. This is the Wild Lilac, and I'm going to cut up a card base out of this. It'll be an A2 size top folding card base. And then I'm going to cut a panel for stamping. I'm also going to cut a white panel to mat my Wild Lilac panel on. I'm cutting up a bunch for the rest of the projects in this video right now. And then I'm going to cut this a little bit smaller than my card base. I'm going to cut it by 4 by 5 1/4. And then I will cut my Wild Lilac panel by 3 3/4 by 5. And then everything will layer up nicely. I'm going to use my anti-static powder bag, and I'm going to put that all over my cardstock piece here. And I'm going to ink up my stamp with Versamark ink, and then I'll stamp down that big stamp. I'm using my mouse pad for my MISTI here so that I get a nice solid impression. And I'll fill in this background with that large stamp set, twisting and turning it, and then I get a nice pattern look all over the cardstock. So I've got some white embossing powder here. I'll sprinkle that over top of my cardstock, and then I will heat that up until it's smooth and melted. And then this background is complete. I'm going to pull in my mini MISTI and the butterfly from the same stamp set, and I'm going to ink that up with some Wild Lilac ink. And then I'm going to wipe off my stamp, and I'm going to ink it up with Versamark ink. And then I have some sparkle embossing powder from Recollections, and I'm going to cover this butterfly with my sparkle embossing powder. We'll still be able to see the purple through this. It'll just be nice and shiny and sparkly. And then I will heat that up with my heat gun until it's smooth and melted. And then I'm going to go back to the sentiment. I should have done this all at the same time. I'm going to go back to the stamp set, and I'm going to pull out the greeting, "I've been thinking about you." And I'm going to stamp that with the Wild Lilac ink. And then I'm going to wipe off my stamp and stamp it with the Versamark ink. I'm just going to try to line it up over top. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I get pretty close here. And then I'm going to use the same sparkle embossing powder and sprinkle it over top, and then heat that up with my heat gun. And I'm just showing you the sparkle in that embossing powder. Okay, I'm going to take the butterfly die, and I'm going to tape that down over the butterfly, and then trim out my sentiment using my Tim Holtz trimmer. I just line up the words to the edge of the guide and trim everything out so we get a nice straight sentiment strip. And then I'm going to take this butterfly to my die cutting machine off screen, get everything cut out, and then we're going to put this card together. I'm going to adhere my panel to my white matting layer, and then I'm going to take some Gina K Connect glue, and I'm going to glue a piece of craft foam in behind this panel. I'm just going to use some scissors to cut this fun foam down to hide behind my panel, and then I'll take my Connect glue and glue my fun foam to the back of my panel, and then glue this to my card base. And then I'm going to take my mini MISTI and set this on top just to give it a little bit of pressure while I work on the sentiment. So I've got a piece of the fun foam here. I'm going to glue that to the back of my sentiment strip. And then I'm going to put some foam squares on the back of my butterfly. And then I'm going to glue my sentiment strip to my card base. And then pop up my butterfly. And then I'm going to sprinkle some sequins around my card and just put a few here and a few there, just to give it a little bit of extra shine. And then that's going to be it for this card. Here's a close-up look at project number 1. You can see all that sparkle with the sequins and with the sparkle embossing powder. Super pretty. Okay, project number 2. We're going to use the heartfelt stencil and some deco foil transfer gel. So I've got some low tack painter's tape, and I'm just going to tape my stencil to my work surface. And then I'm going to take my silicone spatula and scoop out some of this deco foil transfer gel. And I'm just going to spread this across my stencil. Then I'm just going to clean it up real quick and wipe everything down, and then set this panel aside to dry. Now once it's dry, I'm going to grab some Gina K and Thermal Web fancy foils. This is the Radiant Red fancy foil, and I'm just going to cut a piece down to the size of my panel. Now I'm just going to grab a parchment paper with my cardstock shims, and this is the binder that I keep all of my foil mates inside of, so that I can flip through them and see what I want to use whenever I'm foiling. So I like to keep them all together. Okay, back to my project. So I've got my parchment paper with my cardstock shims inside of here, and I'm going to put my panel inside my little sandwich here, and then I'm going to slip that into my laminator. Now I've just got a basic Scotch laminator, nothing fancy, but it works. So I'm going to run that through a couple of times. I'm going to have a drink of my tea here while I wait. Okay, so let's open this up and take a look. So now you can be a little bit more careful and get a better job transferring these hearts onto here. I was going for more of a distressed look, but you can definitely make your deco foil transfer gel thicker so that you get clear impressions on your hearts. But I like this look. This was fun. So I'm going to trim this panel down to 3 3/4 by 5, and I've got a piece of black cardstock there to mat this layer on, and I've got an side folding A2 size card base here, and this is also cardstock from the kit. This is the red velvet cardstock, and I'm just going to use my bone folder. I'll crease my cardstock to create my fold, and then I'm going to get to the sentiment here. I'm going to pull out a Happy Valentine's Day plus this little swirly hearts. And I've got this little zippered bag that I keep all of my scraps in. I've got them all in coordinating color bags, blacks and grays. And so I'm going to stamp down this sentiment and heat emboss that with my white embossing powder. And then I decided to cut out a red velvet heart from a layering die set I have in my stash. And then we're going to put this card together. So I've got some adhesive dot runner tape here. I'm going to tape my panel to my matting layer and then to my card base, and then I'm going to pop up my little heart with an insane amount of foam squares and get that centered in the middle of my card. And then I decided to just trim around that little doodled heart border thingy. Doodly hearts. I'm going to trim out these doodly hearts, and then I'm going to glue that with my Gina K Connect glue to my big red heart. Here's a close-up look at the finished project and all of that radiant sparkly fancy foil. This card is complete. Okay, moving on to project number 3. We're going to use the Happy Herbs stamp set, and I've got a piece of grass green cardstock from the kit, and I'm going to cut an A2 size top folding card base here and score that. Use my bone folder to crease my fold, and then I'm going to grab an oval die from my stash and a white piece of cardstock that measures 4 by 5 1/4. Now later on I'm going to take this to my die cutting machine, but for now we're going to do some stamping. So I'm going to take the little pot that was in the stamp set, and I've got some Gina K Designs Delicate Essentials pattern paper. I'm going to do some paper piecing. So I'm going to stamp my pot 3 times, 1 on each of the cardstocks, and then I'm going to trim out what I want from each piece of pattern paper. So for the bottom of the pot, I'm taking this green stripe, and then for the top of the pot, the rim, I strategically stamped this so that I got that little vine across the lip of the pot. So I'll get that trimmed out, and then I'm going to glue everything to my white cardstock here with my Gina K Connect glue. And I'll use my reverse tweezers just to help me line everything up and hold the little small pieces so I don't get glue all over my hands. Okay, and I'll get this glued down. I'm just going to take a brown alcohol marker. This one happens to be a Spectrum Noir alcohol marker, and I'm just going to fill in the top of the pot as if it's a bunch of dirt there. I'm going to use my Copic marker blender pen just to give the soil some variation so it's not all one solid color. And then I'm going to trim this pot out with my scissors. So I'm not the best fussy cutter. I really go super duper slow, but I've sped this up super fast for you. But otherwise we'd be here all day watching me fussy cut. Okay, so I've got my oval cut out and my panel embossed with my Swiss Dot Cuttlebug folder. And then I'm going to figure out my placement, where I want to stamp my herbs and where I want to put my frame. I'm going to stick everything into my MISTI and use my magnet to hold everything into place, and I'll put my little pot inside of my opening and use my pencil as a guide where I want to stamp my herbs. I'm going to stamp with some fresh asparagus ink, and I'm inking up my herbs 3 times to create a nice full pot of thyme. And I've got the packaging here from one of my stamp sets. Maybe it's from the pattern paper, but I use that to help me move my dirty stamp around so that I can get it where I want to put it without marking up my cardstock and without having to clean my stamp. So now I'm going to take a whole whack of foam squares. This is insane. I got enough sag in my life that I don't want any sag on my cardstock. And then I'm going to erase that pencil line, glue down my little pot, and pop in my sentiments. Now, originally I thought I would try doing this with some white pigment ink, but it just wasn't dark enough, so I went back over top of my white pigment ink with some charcoal brown. And the sentiment reads, "It's party time." And then the pot says time on it as well. So here's a close-up look at my party time potted herb card. And that's it for this project. Moving on to project number 4. So this is the last project that we'll make. I'm using the bubblegum pink cardstock from the kit, and I'm creating a card base out of that, an A2 size, and I'll score that with my score tool and my score buddy and use my bone folder. As per usual, no surprise here. You guys know how this works by now. And then I'm going to take my cardstock and get a layer of black and then a layer of pink. Same size as we've used already today. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. 4 by 5 1/4, and then 3 3/4 by 5. And then I'm going to take this little dotted stitch heart, this swirly doodle, and I'm going to stamp that down throughout the whole background of this cardstock and just fill in all the spaces and make a neat little pattern here. And then I'm going to take a pink alcohol marker and just color in all the hearts and the little overlap swirly doodle. And I'm just going to color those in super duper quick. Nothing fancy, no shading, just laying down some color for some fun interest. And then I grabbed a scrap of black cardstock. I grabbed the envelope from the Friendship Heart stamp set, used my anti-static powder bag, and then just kind of stamped this randomly all over that little tiny panel and just filling it in. And then I'm going to take my embossing powder, cover my cardstock, put away my embossing powder so I don't make a mess, and then heat it up until it's smooth and melted. And I'm going to grab a couple of Prismacolored pencils. I've got a white Prismacolor pencil and a pink one. And then I'm going to color my hearts in white and then go over top with the pink. I just think it creates a nice soft look. So that's it for that. Now I've got this oval. I'm not even sure what I wanted to do with it. I had no idea where I was going with this card. But I really wanted to use this oval for some reason, so I went with it. I grabbed this little stamp that says, "You're my best friend," from that Friendship Heart stamp set, and then I'm going to adhere my little envelope strip to this oval and then trim off the bottom of the oval. And then I'm going to ink up the outside edge of this little sentiment with my onyx black ink. And then I've got some sheer black ribbon here, and I'm going to show you how to make a really cool fancy bow. So what I do is I take my ribbon and I wrap it around my fingers. I take 3 fingers. You can do 3 or 4 or 2 depending on how big or small you want this bow, and just wrap it around your fingers multiple times until you're all the way to the end and everything is nice and even. And then grab some reverse tweezers and pinch everything together. So you want to make sure this is nice and straight and held on nice and tight. And then we're going to grab some super duper sharp scissors and we're going to cut a V in the side of the ribbon. And just take your time here, make sure that the ribbon doesn't shift around or move. And then turn to the other side and you're going to do the exact same thing. Now you want to make sure that your V's don't touch. So you're going to trim out a little V, but do not connect the two sides together. Otherwise it's just going to fall apart. So here you see we've got a little, what's kind of looks like an X at this point. And then we'll grab some twine. Tie a piece of twine around the center of this little black X V cut pile of ribbon thing here. I'm going to tie it nice and tight. Now I did tie a bow, but I went back and cut it off. So now you're just going to fuss with your little loops and you can pull them out and twist them and kind of set them up to see how you like it and how full you want to make it look. And now this can be bigger or smaller depending on how many layers you use. And that bow that I tied was getting in my way, so we'll just go back and snip that off, get that out of the way. So let's just leave that alone and go back to the card. Okay, let's get some of that sheer black ribbon onto my card panel. So I'm going to use my adhesive dot runner and glue that black panel to my card base. And then I'm going to take another piece of that sheer black ribbon. I'm going to tape that all down to my colored panel and then adhere that to my card base. Okay, once I'm happy with that, I will get my sentiment onto my card. And I'm just using some foam squares for that sentiment, get that into place. And then I'm going to grab some glue dots for that fancy fluffy ribbon. And I think I put 4 glue dots total on this ribbon to make sure it doesn't go anywhere and holds down into place nicely. And I find it sticks better to the paper rather than to the other piece of ribbon itself. So you might want to try that. So just fuss with that until you're happy with it. Here's a close-up look at the finished card project. And that's it for today's video. Here are all 4 card projects that we made today. Thank you so much for stopping by to spend some of your time with me here today. I hope that you've been inspired to use your Gina K Designs, a big hello card kit in a few different ways. Coming up on screen are a few videos that I think you may enjoy. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider clicking that subscribe button and have a wonderful day. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.